literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today in 2025 is nothing compared to the United States.
Keep hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say. That's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it. It's not good. So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're black.
Not for everybody.
Not if you're black.
Happening in America, a black person killing another black person, for example, for which the perpetrator will be punished, is the same in Whoopi's warped mind as the state killing you because you're a minority, because you're gay or an infidel, for example. Let me be clear. The Iranian regime will hang you from a crane in the public square for crimes like blasphemy, witchcraft, homosexuality, and of course, if you dare show any dissent, if you challenge the brutal regime. Whoopi thinks that's pretty much how black folks are treated in America. You absolute disgrace of a human being, Whoopi, to show absolutely no regard for the Iranian women who risk their lives to challenge the Islamists.
It all started with a brutal reality check that cut through the noise like a blade. A moment on TV that didn't just raise eyebrows, it dropped jaws. On a recent episode of Real Time, the conversation turned to the one place where reason goes to die, The View. And what followed wasn't just commentary, it was a full-on takedown.
I think this is a great first step toward getting the Democrats back to sanity, and a second good step would be, we got to do something about The View.
Imagine a panel show so out of touch. It's now being called a danger to sanity, and not just by random critics online, but live on national TV. The target? The reckless rhetoric coming from one of the most watched daytime shows in America. And this time, it wasn't just about disagreeing on politics.
Let's get back to Whoopi, whose pathetic tantrum was cheered on by The View's equally pathetic and dim-witted audience.
But I think it's important we remember there are places much darker than this country and people who deserve rights.
Not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that way. Listen, I'm sorry. You know, when you think about the fact that we got the vote in 1965.
Okay, they don't have free and fair elections in Iran. It's not even the same universe. They can't go out of their house. The women.
You know what? There's no way I can make you understand.
No, let me try something. It's like try to reverse roles with a black person in this country, let's say, because I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Just try to understand from their point of view. From that point of view, this country does not do them well. Does not go.
Yes, thanks, Joy. Black folks in America have it as bad as the people in Iran. Thanks for that, Joy Behar, you simpleton.
No, this was about saving the soul of liberalism. That old school version that once stood for free speech and basic common sense. And here's where it really kicks off, calling out The View as a massive part of the problem. Not because it's liberal, but because it's gone off the rails. When one host compared the experience of being a woman in Iran to being a black person in America today, it wasn't just outrageous. It was offensive, reckless, and flat-out wrong. That statement shocked people not only for how delusional it sounded, but for how casually it was dropped, like it was just another Tuesday. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now, let's continue.
What do you think of Whoopi Goldberg saying it's worse to be a black person in America today than a woman in Iran? You know, I see we were talking about the trans issue before, and the New York Times really has come over on that to the sort of the sensible, liberal, not crazy woke position. I think this is a great first step toward getting the Democrats back to sanity, and a second good step would be, we got to do something about The View. I really believe that. I mean,
could you just it's huge in Iran, though.
Now, here's where things got even weirder. One of the co-hosts on The View, Alyssa Farah, has Iranian roots. And yet, there she was, sitting on that same panel while someone tried to tell her what it's like for women in Iran, as if she didn't know. Imagine being told your own country's oppression is no worse than what's happening in modern America by someone who's never lived it. It wasn't just tone deaf, it was arrogant, and it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. The problem isn't just the statement itself. It's the fact that stuff like this is being broadcast to millions of people every day. And that leads to the real issue. What are we going to do with these people? That's the question that lit up the studio, not out of malice, but frustration. A kind of we need to talk moment with the left-wing media machine. Because here's the thing, this isn't just about one host or one show. It's about the collapse of a political identity. The old-school liberal idea, the one that once stood for truth, progress, and civil rights, is barely recognizable now. It's been hijacked by a loud, irrational group that seems more focused on hot takes than facts. And The View is starting to look like the mothership of that madness. What used to be satire is now real, and people are finally saying, enough is enough. And then came the knockout punch. What does it say when even the New York Times starts walking back from the extreme edge? That's exactly what happened with the trans issue. A paper that once led the charge on every progressive cause has started to pump the brakes. They're beginning to align with a more grounded, liberal, not radical stance. That shift wasn't small. It was a signal, a sign that even inside those elite echo chambers, some people are starting to realize that things have gone too far. And this was brought up as part of the bigger picture. Sanity is making a comeback, slowly, quietly, but it's happening. That's why Maher said this moment, this rare moment of honesty, is a great first step. A step toward dragging the Democratic Party back from the brink of self-destruction. But it won't be enough if we ignore the influence of platforms like The View, where fantasy often replaces facts and emotion tramples over truth. The show might seem like harmless daytime TV, but its reach is enormous. Its messaging shapes opinions, especially among viewers who think they're getting thoughtful analysis, not ideological propaganda dressed up as conversation. If something doesn't change, the same people claiming to defend democracy may end up doing the most damage to it. So, yeah, getting back to sanity starts with calling out the madness. And that's exactly what happened. But just when you think it couldn't get more shocking, the conversation takes a wild turn, straight to Iran. Now here's a fact that caught everyone off guard. Iran is the second highest country in the world for trans surgeries. Let that sink in. A country where being gay is literally criminalized, and women are forced to cover every inch of their bodies in public. Somehow, it leads the charge on gender transitions. That doesn't make sense until you understand why. They're not doing it out of tolerance. They're doing it because they refuse to accept homosexuality. In Iran, if you're a gay man, you're pressured into changing your gender. That way, the regime can pretend it's all normal and straight. It's state-enforced erasure of gay identity, disguised as progress. That's when it gets deeply disturbing. What's being praised in some circles as gender freedom in Iran is actually forced conformity. It's not liberation, it's a workaround. If you're a man who loves men, they tell you, no, you're a woman now. Then they mutilate your body so it fits their narrative. That's their solution. And yet, here we are, with American talk shows still spewing takes like it's just a cultural misunderstanding. No, it's a horror show wrapped in rainbow-color wrapping paper. And somehow, that truth barely ever makes it onto the screens of The View. Why? Because truth gets in the way of the script. And this is where things turn from disturbing to downright dark. Because once Iran forces a man to become a woman through surgery, guess what happens next? Now that he's legally a she, the regime can claim everything's normal. Two men weren't in love. No. It's just a man and a woman now. Crisis averted, right? Wrong. It's nothing more than a twisted loophole. And Maher didn't hold back when he laid it out. He said what everyone else is too afraid to. This isn't about identity or expression. It's about control. Once you're labeled a woman in Iran, the rules change drastically. You're not just free to live your life. You're now subject to even more oppression. You can be forced to cover up, shut up, and disappear under layers of fabric and silence. The chilling part? This isn't ancient history. It's happening now. While daytime TV hosts are crying oppression in the comfort of multi-million-dollar studios, real women in Iran are being beaten, jailed, or even killed for taking off a headscarf. And some men are being forced into gender surgery just to survive. This isn't some edgy hot take. It's a brutal reality. Yet the people with the loudest microphones in America either don't know, or worse, don't care. Because if they acknowledged this, it would shatter their carefully curated narrative. And that's the last thing they want. Now here's where the gloves really come off. Maher didn't just stop at exposing the cruelty in Iran. He turned his attention back to the American media, and specifically to The View, asking a question that hit like a hammer. What are we going to do about them? And no, he wasn't calling for censorship or cancellation. He was calling out the insanity, the blind, self-righteous preaching from a show that treats delusion like wisdom and outrage like virtue. It's become a ritual. Outrageous claim, applause, repeat, and audiences just soak it in. One moment, you're hearing that America is just as bad as Iran. The next, the panel is cheering themselves on like they've just dropped the most brilliant take in television history. Maher mocked the absurdity, pointing out that it's become nearly impossible to even joke about The View anymore without sounding like you're quoting it verbatim. He said it half-jokingly, but you could feel the frustration underneath. Because this isn't just about bad TV. It's about cultural influence. Millions of people watch this show and treat it like gospel. That means millions are being fed a version of reality that's twisted, shallow, and sometimes outright dangerous. And if you dare to challenge it, you're labeled a hater, a bigot, a problem. But when truth becomes offensive and nonsense becomes acceptable, you've got a bigger problem on your hands, one that no applause break can fix. And just when you think it can't spiral any further, it does. There's this moment where the story takes a personal turn. Maher mentions a friend who literally begged him to stop sending clips from The View. Not because they were boring, not because they were irrelevant, but because they were driving him insane. That's how far we've fallen. Watching a daytime talk show is now a legitimate threat to mental health. And you know what? It's not even about the individual hosts anymore. Sure, Whoopi's out here making wild comparisons between America and Iran. Ana Navarro, once a Republican voice of reason, now spouts off like a woke warrior on autopilot. And Sunny Hostin? Maher calls her the most racist person on television. And honestly, if you listen to some of her segments, you start to understand why he'd say that. But here's the twist. Maher says his issue isn't even with them. It's with the people behind the curtain, the executives, the decision makers, the ones who keep giving these hot takes a megaphone. Think about it. They could bring in diverse voices, actual debate, real nuance. But they don't go for any of that because controversy sells. Keeping the same echo chamber personalities on screen is easier than fixing the rot. So instead of challenging the madness, they reward it with airtime, ad dollars, and a spotlight. And then we wonder why the public conversation is so broken. But before we wrap this up, let's take one step deeper into the real cost of this kind of media madness. Because this isn't just a rant about a TV show. This is about how culture gets poisoned in slow motion. How bad ideas, repeated often enough, start to sound normal. That's the dangerous part. It's not just the outrageous clips, it's the normalization of absurdity. When Whoopi Goldberg says, "It's just as bad to be a black person in America today as it is to be a woman in Iran," and the crowd claps instead of gasps, we've crossed into delusion. That applause isn't just background noise. It's a signal. It tells viewers, yes, that's correct. That's the enlightened take. And if you're watching from home, maybe you don't have all the facts. Maybe you've never looked into how Iranian women get beaten in the streets for showing their hair, or how LGBTQ people are arrested, tortured, and silenced. All you see is a smiling panel of celebrities telling you it's basically the same as living in the U.S. So you start to believe it. That's how disinformation spreads. Not through some shady foreign plot, but right in the open, with perfect lighting and commercial breaks. It spreads because it feels good. It flatters your worldview. It makes you feel smart, compassionate, morally superior. And it gives you a villain, usually the other side of the political aisle, to blame for everything wrong in your life. Meanwhile, the people who actually suffer, the real victims, are ignored. Iranian women, gay Iranians, political prisoners, dissidents. None of them fit into the View's narrative, so they get erased. They're inconvenient truths. And the audience, thinking they're fighting for justice, ends up completely blind to actual injustice. That's the tragedy. And if you're wondering how things got so upside down, how the left went from defending truth and reason to pushing culture war fantasies on daytime TV, just rewind a few years. This didn't happen overnight. It happened bit by bit, segment by segment, soundbite by soundbite. It happened when networks decided outrage gets better ratings than nuance, when emotion became more important than accuracy, when what feels right replaced what is right. That's why Maher and others are speaking up now. Because if no one draws a line, then what was once radical nonsense becomes mainstream thought. And when that happens, reason isn't just ignored, it's demonized. And that's a cost no side should be willing to pay. This is where it all comes together, the final gut punch, because if you actually care about the future of the Democratic Party, or liberal values in general, then you've got to take